Alright, so just continuing on the last video, basically what we've done now is we've actually node locked the hand in two different spots, on the flop and on the turn. So the previous video we were looking at the optimal solution, basically what Matthew should be doing to be unexploitable against a GTO Clairvoyant Nemesis. That being said, he is playing 5-5 live. The villain is described as competent and aggressive, but it's very likely that he's going to be expressing many of the tendencies that we see in live players, which I'll walk us through. So, what I've done is, first of all, on the flop, I've got him checking range. Now, this might not necessarily be the most accurate model of what he's doing. That being said, it's a lot better than the previous model, where the optimal solution has him blocking 95% of his range. It's very likely that he's checking a lot of hands here as an exploitative play in the hopes that Matt will stab too often. If he's considered to be having a lag tard image, or just in general, I think the pool might be bluffing too frequently here and not realise that they're actually at quite a large range disadvantage as the preflop caller on 8-3 deuce. So I've got him checking range. The other thing I've got him doing is on the turn when we get to the bet 130 node. So this is where Matt bets the turn after being checked to twice. I now have the villain playing a much less aggressive strategy, where a lot of his hands like Ace Jack, King Jack and Queen Jack, which were doing a ton of check raising ultimately, are now playing a more livey style where they're less likely to check raise. So I've got Ace Jack, King Jack, Kings and Aces check raising half the time and flatting the other half of the time. And with Queens, however, it does need a bit more protection than the higher overpair, so I just have him check jamming this one. The other thing is pocket eights. I've got half jam, half call, and besides that, I've just got him basically calling any pair, so sixes, sevens, any eights, obviously any jack. I've got also him calling any gut shots as well, even some ace highs like ace 9 and ace 10. I do think that competent regulars who might want to make a move or just want to show down with a hand that's actually good quite often will probably make this call. Whether it's good or not in theory is a whole nother question, but I certainly think that regs are capable of calling here. So this is the new and adjusted range. Obviously all the flush draws I've got calling as well. That's why you see all of these quarter calls over here. Cool. So the way this changes the hand actually is quite interesting, because now once he makes the call and the river comes, we can see that there is actually a bit of a leading range now compared to prior, where he was pretty much checking 100%. So what he's doing is he's leading some of his 8x's. He's leading his kings and queens for value, not leading aces, I presume, just primarily due to the removal effect that you have on the calling range. So you want to unblock some of the calls in order to get more value with kings and queens, whereas aces, probably not so much. The other thing we want to consider is the bluffs. So Queen 7 and 7-6 and 6-5 being the most frequent bluffs. Main reason here, I presume, is just going to be showdown value. We can see that the king highs are not being bluffed, I presume because they have substantial amounts of showdown. So we can see king high has like 25% equity, whereas queen high 8%, 7-6 and 6-5 much less. So showdown value is one reason. The other reason, I presume, is also removal. So if we look at Queen 7 in particular, that seems to be a very popular bluff. So let's say villain actually goes for the lead jam in this case. A lot of our calls actually contain 7x, so jack 7, 8-7 and pocket 7s. So we can still see that pretty much all of the jack x's do want to be calling, although it's much less clear of a call than before. So previously we saw ace 9 being the indifference point, and we saw all the pairs being fist pump calls. Now we see that ace 9 is substantially losing. We can see that 7s is the indifferent point, but it's not actually making that much money. We're pretty much only calling it, so we are not exploitable. But considering we're not playing a GDO Nemesis, we can probably be okay with folding 7s. Although I did actually mention in the chat earlier that 7s was probably going to be a call, but in this case it seems okay to actually fold. The jack x do still look like a call. They're making a little bit of money. They're not making a ton, that being said. So, all in all, I would say that I think Matt played the flop and the turn completely fine. I'm happy with the way he played. On the river, it's probably a little bit too tight to be folding this hand, but it's probably also not as close as I initially thought if we assign the villain these sorts of assumptions. Now, the one last thing to note is on the turn, I did have him actually defending ace 10 and ace 9. Now, if the villain doesn't actually defend with these sorts of hands, then obviously he's going to have less bluffs to choose from on the river, which then actually means that Queen Jack might go down in call EV to maybe 50, 40, $30. The one other thing to consider is on the flop, we have him checking range, but previously we had a read that he might be suspicious with his checking range, where he might even be too value heavy. And if that's the case, and he's kind of checking too much pocket eights and pocket aces, and he's also checking some ace 8, king 8, hoping to check jam against a significant probe bet, then obviously this range on the river is going to be even stronger, which might actually push Queen Jack off towards indifference or losing. So all in all, obviously, it does hinge a little bit on assumptions as well. I do think that I personally would have made the call, but I understand in the situation why you would have made the fold, and I don't actually think it's that bad. So that's really it. Um, I think overall the hand was played pretty well, except maybe on the river you can maybe lean towards calling a little bit more, but it's certainly not awful.